We're
Okay,
good?
it's loading right now.
I just got a message that says meeting is now streaming live on YouTube.
Let's see, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we're live.
All right, good. Okay, well, welcome to Planning Commission, August 18th, 2020. Like Austin mentioned, this is streaming live on the Alpine City YouTube channel with a link on the city's website. And we have tonight with us Ethan Allen, John McKay, Sylvia Christiansen, Troy Slade, and Alan McDonald from Planning Commission. And from the city, we have Austin Roy, the planner, Jed Muhlstein, the engineer, and Marla Fox. Sylvia, I have you for our opening prayer, and then Alan for the Pledge of Allegiance. So if we can go ahead and do both of those now.
Our dear Father in heaven, we are very grateful for the opportunity to come together in this community. We're thankful for the freedoms we enjoy and for those who have sacrificed their time and their efforts and even their lives to protect those freedoms. We're thankful for this opportunity to serve our community in a way that will help to hopefully bring unity and preserve the beauty of this beautiful city. And we pray that we will do good for our citizens and our city. And please help us in our service, and please guide us by the Spirit. Please help us to serve humbly and well and in the best interest of Alpine and its citizens. And we say these things humbly in Jesus' name, amen.
Oh, there we go. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for your participation, both of you. And now we have a minute for public comment. If there are any public comments from items that are not on the agenda, then we will hear those now. So if Austin will let us know if any have been submitted or added to YouTube. Austin, do you have any comments that have been emailed in or on the YouTube channel?
Okay, no comments at this time.
Okay, great. Okay, so then we will move on to the first action item, which is a discussion of the general plan land use regulations, intermunicipal connecting streets. So we need to look at updates to the transportation element of the general plan. Austin, were you going to introduce what
I'll go ahead and
like to
introduce
accomplish?
this. Yeah, so this item has been looked at by the Planning Commission. It was in the last meeting. We looked at this, prepared some language. And so this is the language that was agreed upon in the meeting. I know that Sylvia has since submitted some additional feedback and an alternative language, and we can go over that in a little bit. But in addition to that, we also ran this language by the city attorney, David Church, to see what comments he might have regarding this language and how that would hold up in trying to defend the city's position. And so he had a couple of suggestions for the city. The first being that the general plan is ultimately just a planning document. So while it's great that it, outlines what we want to do, it needs to be backed up by ordinance. And so he recommended that we also draft a new ordinance in our subdivision ordinance that addresses this specifically. And so staff have prepared some language based on that feedback from the city attorney. Also, he said that it's important that this be reinforced through the street master plan. And so that our street master plan clearly needs to outline and identify all intermunicipal connections and clearly show those. And so that's something that our plan was kind of lacking. We did have proposed roads on there, but did not exactly outline any of these stub streets that are going into neighboring municipalities. So Jed has gone and kind of done a quick draft of our street master plan, adding those elements, and we'll show that to you in just a moment. Actually, I might as well just show it right now. So this is what we've put together based on the feedback. So this is our street master plan. And if you'll notice here, there are these red targets or dots, which are outlining all the existing or planned, I should say planned connections. So all of these end in some kind of a stub street right now, or they just don't exist. But these are all going to be these have been planned for a long time ago. These would be connections to, and all of them are connections to Highland City. So there's 4 of those, which if I'm counting those correctly, and then there's 2 more up here in the north that connect to the county. So this little piece that comes in on the right-hand side of the screen here, where I'm circling with my mouse, is unincorporated or county land. And so the city has, as part of the street master plan, has had in mind that there would be a future road that would go through there and connect High Mountain Drive to Bald Mountain Drive. So,
what about, these are only stubs, so we don't have to show existing on this, like Box Elder Trail, whatever the name of that street is, that already exists. So we don't need to show that because
we don't have
obvious
to highlight them with that red dot,
right.
But because they're already shown as just a regular road, since they already exist.
And Austin, if you know in the legend there, we're delineating planned connections.
Okay.
Ones. So yeah, we don't need to show existing ones.
Okay. That looks great. I think that's really nice to delineate where those additional connections are expected.
Yeah, so that's the map. Let me show you the language so this is, let's see, the ordinance that we prepared. So this is in our subdivision ordinance, section 4.7. And so this is in the section that talks about streets in a subdivision. And so we've just added a new item here. So for example, up above, it goes into things like cul-de-sac streets, number of streets at an intersection, wildland urban interface requirements. And then down here, what we're proposing is this new language, connections to other municipalities, and the language that we put together here. And, this can obviously be redrafted to sound better if there's a better way to say this, but there shall be no new street connections to municipalities outside of Alpine City unless the connection is existing or planned and shown on the street master plan. So this would be an ordinance that we could refer to if a developer ever came through and wanted to make a connection. We'd have a clear ordinance that specifically any kind of connection.
This is great. All these things would have really helped us. So I am really happy that they're going in. I personally think that wording sounds great. It's direct and to the point, and I don't think you could misunderstand it. Anybody else?
Austin, can you go back to the transportation master plan, the updated one where?
The map?
Yeah, the map.
Sure.
That we were just on a minute ago.
Yeah. Bear with me. Here we go.
Okay, go up to the legend, please. Right, planned intermunicipal connection. Okay. So just a thought. on 16, to be consistent with the transportation master plan, instead of having basically the header called connections to other municipalities, what
Yeah.
if that was read inter-municipal connections to be consistent with the transportation master plan?
That's a great
I know
idea.
Yeah.
But it's just, it's consistent language.
Yeah. It is really nice if we use the same words in every document. It's much easier to connect the points together.
And I know Sylvia likes less words than more.
Okay,
Smart
so
lady.
intermunicipal connection.
Connections.
Connections,
I think that's
okay.
perfect.
Yeah, that's a good, I think it's important to be consistent. So that's a good.
A good call out.
And then to clarify, has your language there for 16 been reviewed by David Church?
This has not. So we got your feedback and then this was put together and we haven't run this since re-met with him to run it by him again. So
is one of our goals then to make sure that policy 1.6 in the this is just our master plan, right? That we worked on last meeting. So as one of our goals is to have our master plan language there in 1.6 that we discussed be consistent with this new ordinance that we're proposing or discussing today.
Right.
It would probably be good that they run together. Honestly, he said that whatever, however we want to word this here in the general plan is fine because it's really not what when it push comes to shove, the language that's gonna be defended or looked at is gonna be the ordinance and not necessarily the general plan. But
I would just say my own 2 cents is that I still like the language of 1.6 because really what we said was that we want street connections to other municipalities. And that's another place we might just call it inter-municipal street connections. There in 1.6, perhaps we could change that again for consideration. Really what we said.
I like that idea.
Yeah, we said we just wanted to be consistent with, must be compatible with the goals and policies of the general plan and shall require city council approval and an update to the plan. So I mean, I still think what we did, maybe with a small tweak or two in the city master plan, is pretty consistent with this language for the new ordinance. A couple of small tweaks, I like it personally, my input.
Okay. I know Sylvia, you submitted some language. Did you want me to share that with the group?
Yeah, but first, before you change to that, let's just look at, can you enlarge that a little bit?
Sure.
So you can see that above the picture, it starts out with a verb, create and maintain. And then 1.1, it starts with promote. And then 1.2 is connect. And then 1.3 is with. And then we get down to 1.6 and all of a sudden we're like in the 10 commandments down there or something.
Yeah.
So I wanted to start it with the word limit. So like limit intermunicipal street connections to existing plan connections only. I think it'll give it a better flow, but it still says, I'm hoping the same
You guys
thing.
are all so smart. Good catches. I love that.
So I just kind of wanted, as Alan said, the consistency. It's also
Right.
more attitude in the word.
Yeah, make our sentences more parallel or whatever it's called, where they start the same. So
So
I like that idea.
That's what I came up with.
I like it.
I mean, I can't compare, I wasn't able to compare side by side. So how much of the rest of it did you change, or is it just the first sentence?
No, I started the second sentence also with the verb, ensure that street connections, but I think, I want other eyes on it, of course, but I think it's consistent with what we're trying to see on, on the today's proposed 1.6.
Yeah, okay, let me look at the draft plan on I can look at the draft on my screen.
I don't, Austin's doing wonderful things here. So yeah,
I
just
know.
look at
Oh, thank you, Austin. Windows technology. Wow.
Windows, there we go.
Okay.
I like both those, Jane Sylvia.
Intermunicipal street connections
John.
to existing planned connections only. What was the word?
Ensure, the first word in the second sentence.
But what about intermunicipal street connections? Is that the same as we had on the map?
The map does use.
Intermunicipal connections.
Uh-huh.
Okay. All right. So limit intermunicipal connections. If we wanted to, we could get rid of street, or we can leave it there, to existing planned connections only. Ensure that street connections to other municipalities outside the city boundaries are compatible with the goals of the policy. Requires and include. So let's see, on the end part says, and include requirements.
Required update.
Could you put and require updates? That's what it already is.
Yeah, I mean, it was really just changing the attitude to match 1.1
Right.
to 1.5 and the rest of the general plan actually. So
Yeah. The only thing I don't like is the word include, because it says ensure that street connections to other municipalities outside the city boundaries are compatible with the goals and policies of the general plan, require city council approval, and require updates to the general plan, street plan. And include required, oh, I see what you're saying, and include required updates. So, yeah, either way is great.
We could simplify that second sentence by not repeating it all over again and use the word intermunicipal again, get rid of that.
Right, or just say, yeah, and ensure that street connections, ensure that these street connections, or ensure that these
you can
connections,
say ensure that such connections are compatible.
ensure that these connections are compatible, yeah. We could shorten that up a little bit. Okay, well, if we're gonna make edits to it, somebody better have their word processor out. Copying and pasting here, I'll try to pull.
I actually have that pulled up here. So what are we doing then?
Okay, so if you have that pulled up, let's see, limit intermunicipal. Do you want the word street there? Limit intermunicipal street connections to existing planned connections only. Ensure that these connections are compatible.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Are
Then
compatible.
we can get rid of that whole sentence there, yeah. Are compatible with the goals and policies of the general plan. It's such a long sentence. If you wanted to, you could also put a period there, but I think it's okay. Which shortened it up significantly the way it is.
I like the street just because it defines, we're talking about street connections, like trail.
Okay, that's
Well,
true. Okay,
We do want trail connections.
okay, let's leave the word street in then. That's great. Intermunicipal street, ensure that these connections are compatible with the goals and policies of the general plan, require city council approval, and include. Or do you like and include required updates, or and require updates to the general plan, blah, blah, blah? Either way is good. Okay.
Either way.
I think that's great. And then what about, so back to the ordinance that we were looking at, then, oh, it was we wanted to match the wording in the ordinance. So the ordinance wording. There we are. And changing the title there to be intermunicipal street connection, intermunicipal connections.
Street connections.
street connections, intermunicipal street connections.
And do we need to specify anything where it says unless the connection is existing? Do we need to define that at all? I mean, do we need to
that seems
say?
like that's just, yeah, that seems to me as that's just
Well,
no,
it says there shall be no new street connections.
right?
So it applies only to the new street connections unless the connection is existing or planned and is
Maybe-
shown.
Maybe "and" should be changed to "as." So unless the
That's a good
connection
idea.
is existing or planned as shown on the street master.
As
plan.
shown on the, yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I like that better.
Hey, can I just make one observation? Is that
Mhm.
this, at least on the bottom of this, is the Alpine City Transportation Master Plan. I know we use those interchangeably, but as far as our actual documents, maybe instead of calling that Street Master Plan, we should call it Transportation Master Plan, so there's no confusion about what we're referring to. Or
In the general plan.
we can change this, right?
Mhm.
Mhm.
Street Master Plan. I'm just saying this is called Transportation Master Plan.
Right.
And we call it here with capital letters, the Street Master Plan.
Is that the ordinance that has street master plan? Or are you saying the master plan?
The ordinance has Street Master Plan.
Interesting.
Referring to is called the Transportation Master Plan. I'm just
Right.
saying we ought to be consistent.
Yeah,
And I
Mhm.
think
one or the other.
the official document for the city is the Transportation Master Plan.
So let's change that to say.
But I don't
We
know.
probably need to do a better job of calling it the Transportation Master Plan, because I think we always refer to it as the Street Master Plan.
honestly, I think if push came to shove in court, it wouldn't make any difference either way.
No. But if we're changing it and there's one that's better than the other, let's change it while we're here. It doesn't, but if changing the ordinance title will kind of be a difficult change because it's referenced in many places. That's the only thing I worry about is if we change the title of the ordinance, will it cause any other problems as far as referencing it anywhere else?
I like transportation, excuse me. I like transportation better because we have streets and roads and boulevards and avenues. I don't know. Do we
Yeah.
have it? So just if anyone gets technical, transportation covers them all.
Yeah. Jed, do you think changing the title of this would be difficult or cause any additional problems?
Within the ordinance,
Yeah, the title of the ordinance.
no, I don't think it'll cause any problems. We already need to have a public hearing and everything for this
Okay.
adjust language anyway, so it's really not.
Let's just add that to it then, to change it to be this transportation.
Yeah, that's not a big deal.
Okay.
And just one more thing. So do we need to add okay, so where it says let's see. Oh, okay, outside of Alpine City, unless the connection is existing or planned, do we need to put street in there again unless the street connection is existing? Because sometimes I'm reading over that and I'm like, I mean, could anybody ever interpret that as trail connection or something like that? Or
Mhm.
I don't know.
Intermunicipality, are we putting street on the header of that where it says intermunicipality street connections?
Yeah, the language would be intermunicipal street connections instead of connections to
Okay.
other municipalities.
Okay, so that's okay then if we have
Yeah,
that
we're-
there.
Streets in there, plenty.
Yeah, okay,
Okay.
good thought.
Where are you putting the word transportation in that?
The title, can you scroll
Instead
up,
of the word street,
Austin?
instead of the word street, I'll highlight it on my screen.
Yes,
This word needs to be replaced with transportation.
Okay, thank you.
and then what is the heading of this section in the ordinance?
Section itself, this is in the streets and street requirements of the subdivision ordinance.
Oh, it's the subdivision ordinance, okay. Perfect.
Well, okay, just once again, I think that Jane had a good comment which said, well, look, if we're used to calling it one thing,
Mhm.
now for sake of consistency, we're going with transportation master plan. Let me just real quick draw your attention. Back up to page 1, please, Austin. Underneath the amendment.
Right there.
Just see if we're apples to apples. Keep going up. Okay, right there. Subdivision plans shall be consistent with the major street plan.
Oh, where did that come
Street
from?
plan different than the transportation master plan?
That should be not major street
What's the
plan. Shouldn't that be
major street-
master street plan? Or the transportation
That's
plan?
language that's in the ordinance right now, so I don't know where that came from, but that's what's in the
But
ordinance.
just out of curiosity, because we use it down in 1A, 1B. I'm just asking.
Major street
the
plan.
major street plan, which is, obviously capitalized MS and P. Is that referring to what we would be currently calling the
That's gotta be a
transportation master
mistake.
plan? Or is that
Yeah.
a different plan? What's
Well,
the-
you know what I think it's doing? You know how we have existing collectors and arterial? Because the next one says minor streets.
Mhm.
And then it has major streets. And so I think they're using language that we don't have on the map. We may have modified the map or something without catching that difference in wording.
This is our definitions as found in section 4.3 of the ordinance, and there is a major street plan. A map of the city of Alpine, which shows existing public, so this is a definition that currently already exists, which shows public streets and which has been officially adopted by the Planning Commission and City Council as the major street plan.
Okay,
We
so
should
what is the major street plan?
Find that, yeah, find us a major
Is that a
street plan.
different document than the transportation master plan?
Jed, do you know if those are different, if there's another document out there?
The transportation plan's the only map and the only plan we have.
Okay.
I think this is a
Well, then,
leftover that's been missed.
Okay, but so then it seems to me like there's a couple of options, well, 3 really. One is just to leave the inconsistencies, but that doesn't seem like a good option. So option 2 would be, instead of calling it the transportation master plan, we keep this language that already exists in the development code and the definitions. We keep that term major street plan, but we change this document, so you don't have to go down and find it, to major street plan, if that is the major street plan.
I think it's confusing because there's major streets and minor streets and arterial streets and trails. I think we need to change in the development code.
Well, then if that's the case, Sylvia, the way you clean that up is change that definition and just get rid of major street plan, because that's basically with capital M, S, and P. That's referring, to me, that would be referring to an actual document.
Yeah, I think so.
I think that right. I think that one right there needs to be changed to just transportation master plan or whatever.
I think so too.
That would make sense.
Many years ago, Horrocks did a document or did a street master plan for the city. It's like 100 and something pages big, and it's called the Alpine City Master Transportation Plan. So, I mean, we're not going to change the name of that document. I think the ordinance and the general plan and the map that we've got, everything needs to align with that. The transportation master plan is really what its name should be.
Yeah, I like that.
What about where it says minor streets on this? So I totally agree with you. I think that should be the transportation master plan. And
So,
then,
if
but
you
then
look
it
back-
says minor streets.
Correct. If you look back on the map, and the transportation master plan document actually defines arterial, collector, minor, secondary. Our ordinance also
I don't see
defines.
minor. I don't see minor on this.
I see arterial.
Arterial
Arterial.
collector, local secondary collector.
So minor is the same as local. It says it right there in the ordinance.
Oh, it does?
Yeah, right
Oh,
there.
okay. Why don't we just change the name minor streets to local streets? Or is
Doesn't-
minor street, can we search for the word minor streets and see if that exists anywhere else? Because,
I think the terms are used interchangeably. And so when other people are looking at our documents that are used to the word local,
mhm.
they realize that local means minor and vice versa. I actually like leaving it there just the way it is, but
Mhm.
I know
Okay, or I just wondered to match the map if we should put local streets in parentheses minor
we could do that.
and just the opposite. So it has both of them, but again, we have a, oh my gosh, I'm tired. This time of night isn't my best time of night. A legend on the map that says local. And then we have a heading on here that says minor. And I would think the same kind of thing, having it say local with minor in parentheses would be better, but. And
I
then
could go-
change the word minor into local, or to local street classes.
Probably make the most sense to just update the map and do the planned local and planned, locals and then minor in parentheses or vice
Yeah,
vice
but
versa.
either one of those would work, but I think we need to have both names in both places, because right now on the map, nothing tells me that it's referring to a minor street interchangeably.
I would agree with that, because when I've worked on transportation plans before, I've never seen local, I've only seen minors. So not that we're doing it wrong, we can do it however we want, but I think we need to somehow notate that they are the same.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
and it's already done in the ordinance right here, so.
It's kind of an industry standard thing, the minor.
And so should we update the map to say existing minor parenthesis local?
We could do that.
Well, that's kind of right there.
It would match the ordinance.
Right, that's what I'm saying, is I think it should match the ordinance, or we should change the ordinance to match the map, one of the two.
The map
If
should-
minor is a more standard, then,
The map should match the ordinance.
right. So that's one more change we'll need to mention, is that we want the
So correct me if I'm wrong,
legend.
but it seems to me like and Austin, but it seems to me like whenever I've worked, I've seen minor roads, whenever I've worked on something like this before.
Yeah, minor is a very commonly used. So I think it's important that we have the word minor in there, definitely.
Okay, well, let's just change the legend to say existing minor, parenthesis local, and then planned minor, parenthesis local. Are the rest of the terms on the map consistent? Arterial, collector, secondary, intermunicipal.
I think everything else looks consistent.
It looks like it to me as well. Okay, so add that to our growing list of emotion.
Emotion or emotion?
See, this is one of the times when the concept of creating emotion first and then discussing it is not going to work.
Yes, agreed. But this was wasn't this just for discussion today?
Yeah, Austin, I thought you said we needed to have a public hearing to make these official.
Yeah,
We do. Yeah, this will have to come back. So I'll take all of these corrections, run it by the attorney one more time, and then we'll hold a public hearing on it when we're, I
okay,
think,
perfect.
when we're zeroing in on the exactly what we want. But I think we're getting close. So
I do too. I think these are great things that we're catching. I think as we do it, it's really important, and I appreciate you guys looking through this in detail, that we correct any inconsistencies. So you can see how easily over the years, the ordinances don't match what's going on because just little changes to the wording and things like that are so easy to miss.
Yeah.
And the building or the code is so fascinating to read that I don't know why everyone hasn't read it multiple times. So can you guys think of anything else? So we've got the map matching the ordinance. We've got the wording from the map and from the proposed or the draft master plan, so that that's matching the ordinance as well in the wording. Were there any other aspects to this? We've got the ordinance, the master plan, and the street or the transportation master plan.
Got
Do you
it.
think you have all the direction you need, Austin, on that? Can you guys, John, did you have something else?
I was just going to ask, when we see this again, it will be coming back in its final form for recommendation on the city council, both for the general plan as well as the ordinance changes, right?
Yes, yeah, we'll bring it back and hold a public hearing the next time on it.
What about since the master plan is just a draft and we're proposing changes to the draft, is that something they haven't adopted it. So I don't know that that's something that we have to make a recommendation on. It's just an update to a draft.
Yeah, so I guess we're dealing with 3 different documents. So there's the transportation master plan, as I guess we're calling it now.
Yeah.
And then there's the ordinance, which we've been looking at. And then we also have the transportation element of the general plan. So the ordinance requires a public hearing. We'll come back and we'll hold a public hearing on that. As you mentioned, the general plan is just a draft. So we're just sending that recommendation on, but again, that's not an actually adopted document at this point in time. So we don't have to hold a public hearing on that at this time. The general plan will have to have a public hearing for the entire thing when that gets adopted. And the city council is looking at the general plan as a whole right now. And obviously, the planning commission worked very hard on that for many years. And so they're looking at that, and this could be added into the work that they're doing right now. So in reality, we'll have a public hearing on the ordinances and then the transportation master plan map.
Great. Okay, if we don't have anything else that we need to do on that, are we okay to move on to the next action item?
Yes, yeah, we can just go ahead.
Okay, let's just go ahead and move on. So the next action item we have is we want to discuss what kind of training materials are available. And we've all hopefully watched those 3 training videos on YouTube from the ombudsman, and then read through what Alan had written up as a summary off of those videos, so that it's like a reference back to it, which gave a great summary for it. And then we were going to also look at, I think, what David Church sent out, which I hadn't seen before. So Austin, do you want to get us up to speed on what's happening here?
Yeah, so I think you've done a pretty good job, actually, pretty much summing up what we have here. So this is the write-up that Alan prepared based on those videos. Now these videos, they're coming from the Land Use Academy of Utah, which is a coalition that's made up of legislatures and state ombudsman and some other groups, important groups. And so it's actually the source of those videos is a very authoritative source in the state of Utah when it comes to these kind of things. And so it's actually a very good resource that we're using. And just to also make note that they do have there is a luau website, the Land Use Academy of Utah, luau for short. They have where they have other training videos on other topics as well. So it's a great resource for public servants and officials that, there's a lot of good resources there. That being said, this is a great kind of cheat sheet that I think will come in handy for future Planning Commission members. It's just nice to see everything kind of condensed down into a document that you can just quickly glance at and get either remind yourself of what you saw in the video, or it's a nice little snapshot of what are some responsibilities that you should know. So the language that from David Church, that letter, I forgot. I guess I forgot to send that to all of you.
No, I think you did send it, but now I can't find it. Anyway, maybe you could resend it. Did you guys see it? Okay.
I'll resend
There
it.
were so
to
many
everybody just in
documents
case.
that
We've had so much stuff going back and forth. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll make note to resend that to you all, or I can try and do it right now if you want.
Hey, Austin, can I ask you a couple of questions?
Sure.
Some things that were left, that were kind of left a bit unclarified because they were left to the local city councils, was a couple of questions I had for you. If you go to the second page, right in the middle, under handle administrative matters if delegated. If you note in there, I think I took this language right from the video, and it says there let's see, first, second, third sentence. The Planning Commission only has these administrative functions if the city council has delegated them. I know both city staff and the Planning Commission handle some, administrative functions. So I'm assuming that somewhere in our code or ordinances, the city council has delegated administrative functions to the Planning Commission. Is that the case?
That would be correct. So one that comes to mind would be, so for example.
PRDs, for example, right?
Which one?
PRDs, for example.
Oh yeah, so for a PRD, that's a great example. That the ordinance clearly outlines, in that instance, it does need to go through the administrative process, and it clearly outlines the Planning Commission's responsibilities.
Okay, so I might take that sentence, for example, and say in Alpine City, for example, the Planning Commission has certain administrative functions as delegated by the city council. If I'm making this specific to the city of Alpine, that would be an accurate statement.
Yeah, yes, I would say so.
Yeah.
There's
oh, go ahead.
Then a similar question on page 3 under administrative functions. If you go to the next page, the first and second sentences there, well, actually the third. However, a local ordinance may require a public hearing for administrative functions. Well, I guess I should preface that by saying, the guy in that video said state law does not require a public hearing for administrative decisions. It only requires a public meeting. But local ordinance might require a public hearing for administrative functions. What is the Alpine City rule or ordinance on that?
The city ordinance, so for like a certain plat amendments, if you're changing the use or the zone, our ordinance specifically says that you have to have a public hearing.
But those are legislative. So the question is, what administrative functions do we hold public hearings on?
Let me think.
And, I'm thinking that sometimes the mayor will just request one for the public, to talk about it. Like, how about this? The cell phone tower. Was that a change of use of the zone? But we had a public hearing on that. Why did we have a public hearing on the cell phone tower?
Well, yeah, so there are a lot of places in our ordinance where essentially it's basically, there's several occasions where the city council at their discretion may authorize the planning commission. And that can be for a number of different administrative functions. So it kind of leaves it open-ended, really, what that could be. But
And that's what I think it is, Alan. I think it's just at the discretion of the city council. If they want a public hearing held for an administrative function, they do.
If, for example, like the cell phone towers, they want us to face the lions first.
Yes, exactly. They had their turn later though, but
Yeah, because if the public already has a
yeah.
of meat, they might not be as hungry when they go to the city council.
Well, my understanding on those were, if the public hearing in those cases were to allow the public to bring forth information that we might not be aware of. So like if this, if I understood from when that same man came and did training for us, but and that's why he says you're, not to listen to the public clamor, but you're trying to listen to see if, did they bring any new evidence or anything that would make you look at the ordinance differently? Did it actually apply or not apply or things like that? But I don't know that there's any document or anything that I've seen that says in these cases, even though they're administrative, Alpine City requires a public hearing. But I would like to know that, if you find out anything different, Austin, I think that would be worth finding out. If it really is just at the discretion of city council, or is there something we're following that tells us when it's an administrative function, do we have a public hearing?
Yeah, and I would just say let's just illustrate this issue with I think that's a good one, Jane, is the Verizon cell tower issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it would have been nice to know if, like, look, this is an administrative function where there is an ordinance and an application made on that ordinance, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, in other words, if it's strictly an administrative function that does not, by ordinance, does not require a public hearing, right? It might be a public meeting. It's obviously a public meeting, but it may not be a public hearing. Because then if you go through, and I thought this was particularly interesting, listening to the video and then just kind of working on summarizing this part, working with public input, just, having done this for a couple of years now. And sometimes what we do, there's not even a single person on YouTube watching. Another time, torches and pitchforks, coming up Main Street, for a hearing. So, it's interesting to understand. And honestly, there's a point of public education, right? Where it may be a real touchy subject, with the public, but it's a public meeting, but not a public hearing, then I think where, Jane as the chair, you take somewhat of a firm, position, just say, look, here's what planning commission is. Here's what city council is. Here's what administrative function is. Here's what a legislative function is. And so, we are an appointed body. They are a legislative body accountable to the public. So what we're doing today is X, but that does not mean just because there may not be a public hearing today, that does not mean that there will not be, a public hearing in front of the city council, for example. I mean, the right time and right context, it would just be good to understand what we're doing and why, and whether we're having a public hearing or a public meeting and why, and then educating the public if it is a public meeting but not a hearing. There's just things that have come up before us that would be good to know beforehand, what the rules of engagement were as far as, public clamor and administrative decisions and how they're made. And, I think it's just really good for us to particularly understand this, this concept.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I would add that it would help us do our job better. Like, for example, on the Blue Bison subdivision amendment, I
Mhm.
thought that that was an administrative function. Had I known that that was a legislative function, I would have weighed the evidence differently. And so I think it's important for us to know that before we go into things. And I need to do, that's something that, you know, I should have found out and maybe made a reference to or something. Because, you know, that at that point it is when you look at things differently than if you are just looking if it matches the ordinance. So, Austin, do you think that there is a way that as we introduce things, as we introduce items, that they could be introduced as we have an administrative item here, blah, 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 blah. Or we have a legislative item here, blah, 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 blah. I'm just trying to think, and that doesn't have to be, I'm brainstorming ideas of what would give us clues, and which we could then, as we talk about it, help the city, citizens of the city understand what it is we're doing.
Yeah,
on
well,
those
I think
items.
it's already, I think we already kind of do that in a way by calling it either a public meeting or a public hearing. So one of the problems that we see a lot of the time is people will come to a public meeting and they think it's a public hearing. They just assume that any item on the agenda is a public hearing and they have the right to comment and voice their opinion on it, which is not the case
Right.
when it's a public meeting.
Right.
So, you know, if the planning commission is armed and they know that going into the meeting, they can address that appropriately in the meeting and say, you know,
Right.
this is not something that we're taking public input on at this time, except, you know, for XYZ, it's an administrative function or whatever the case may be.
But sometimes we have public hearings on administrative items. That's my point. If the city council directs us to, we will have a public hearing on an administrative item.
Yeah, and honestly, we could have a public hearing on anything the city
Right.
council deems necessary. It could be administrative, legislative, doesn't matter. As they feel there's a need for it, they can hold a public hearing on anything they want to.
Right. So I guess what I'm saying is, as a member of Planning Commission, and I'm doing my best to determine when something is legislative or administrative, and I obviously haven't done as good a job of that as I want to. I want to know if anything we're having a public hearing on, if it's administrative or legislative. So if it's, I will just assume that anything we have a public hearing on then is a legislative function, unless otherwise noted by you or something like that. That's what I'm trying to say, I guess.
Right. Yeah, so I mean, I guess, yeah, I will let you know.
I'm just saying, will you help us? Right. You
Yeah,
don't have to,
yeah.
if you don't want to say it in the meeting, whatever, is that we need your help to know if what we're doing is legislative or administrative, so that we can look at it. I mean, like an ordinance change is legislative, right? And that's why we're going to have a public hearing on it. I mean,
Correct.
we wouldn't, and so we look at this and we don't say, does it meet the ordinance? Because this is the ordinance. We look at this and say, is this in the best interest of the city? Does this clearly define what we're discussing? You know, all those types of things. And we can say, well, my opinion is blah, 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 you know? And so, you know, that is very different. We're like I said, looking at the Blue Bison, since it was a subdivision, normally when subdivisions come before us, and we're recommending approval, that is an administrative function, right?
Subdivisions would be considered yeah, it's an administrative function, because if it
Right.
meets all of the ordinances, you have to approve it.
Exactly.
Exactly.
So can you see why there's the confusion that a plat amendment seems like an administrative function? Because it's a modification of a subdivision.
Right, yeah.
So I had no idea that a plat amendment was a legislative function.
Yeah,
And-
and we
and
can
so-
try and do a better job of,
So yeah, I'm just saying
Yeah.
we need help because we don't do this as much as you do. And so will you please help us to know which we're doing when we, especially, anytime that we may have public input there too, so that I can kind of guide the meeting better that way.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I feel the same way, Jane. I just wanted to voice. I felt the same way, especially like you referred to the blue bison thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I honestly wasn't sure which capacity we were acting in, and it was it was frustrating,
Yeah.
But I'm new, and I assumed everybody else
Knew what they were doing. Never assume. Okay. So can we look at the document then? Oh, sorry, Alan, did you have anything else on that you wanted to point out?
And I have a question when Ellen's done
Okay.
answering.
No, but I will say I just discovered something cool is if you just want to temporarily talk, just push your space bar and talk and then immediately go right back on mute.
Wow, you made my life easier. Thank you.
Talking,
Not.
Life
yeah.
hack. Nice. I did not know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. It just popped up on my screen. I'm temporarily unmuted to your chagrin. No, I guess the only thing I would say, and then just yield the floor to Sylvia, is the only thing that that I could think of also adding to this might just be sort of a summary of procedure, right? This is more or less process, but maybe I could just add something along procedure, right? Hey, this is kind of what we do and how we do it. Not much, but again, it's just a fluid document. So any recommendations or additions that anybody has would certainly be welcome.
Great. Oh, Sylvia.
Austin, can you go to the first page, please? There's just one sentence in there I just don't get. So I'm hoping you guys can help me. So where it says legislative function makes the law. So it's just the second bold part down. It says this requires taking policy or what local citizens want and turning those desires into law. But what policy, how does a policy become a desire? I mean, if it's a policy, it's already there. And I'm wondering if that is meant to say this requires making policy.
It could be like in
policy.
reference to the master plan. So is master plan considered policy, and then we have to have ordinances that back it up?
I guess it looks to me like what local citizens want, the parenthetical phrase is referring to the word policy. So I'm just really confused by that. Maybe I need to watch the videos or something. But I don't know. Anyway.
Sylvia, what I would say to that is the videos is basically saying, hey, look, as a city council is an elected body, and their job is to take what citizens want, which is policy. The policy of the city is typically what its citizens want, right? And these elected officials are elected and there to represent the wants and the desires of the citizens. So legislation is literally taking policy, defined as typically what citizens want, and turning that into law in the form of ordinances. At least that's what he was saying in the videos, if that makes sense.
Okay. All right, I'll take another look at that with your interpretation. Thank you, Alan.
Is there a document that is considered policy versus documents that are considered ordinances?
Well, our general plan says that we have goals, and then we have policies that back up those goals.
Okay, so are there other places? Where does the city policy live, Austin?
Basically, like Sylvia said, it's the general plan is really our policies, and then the ordinance to back it up.
Okay, that answers the question. So policy is basically the general plan.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Can we take a look now at what David Church sends?
Yeah, let me grab that 1 second. If you just bear with me for a second here.
And if you can send that again, that'd be great. I know I had it and was even reading about it, because I saw something that said what to wear.
Yeah, where is that? Hold on. Okay, I found it.
Okay, great.
So yeah, I think it'd probably be good for me to send this to you because it's kind of something you have to read, really.
Okay,
Not-
okay,
it's
just send
not
it to us and we can
really-
look through it.
It's not like, there's not little bullet points. It's more something that you need to read. So let me
Okay.
just send it to you.
Okay, I was just thinking that perhaps combining those two things might work, or, you know, they would just be two separate documents that we would send to people or whatever, so.
All
So
right,
yeah,
stepped
just,
out. Are you talking about the document Austin was talking about that was drafted by a prior city attorney or something?
yeah, I think it was by David Church. Is that, who did draft this document?
The one, which one? The one, Alan
Is it-
prepared that one that we're looking
No,
at.
David Church, did he draft this or was it the prior
Oh,
city
yes, this is a
attorney?
letter written by David Church. Yes.
Okay, all right.
The one
Yeah,
that
so
I-
he's just gonna resend it to us so that we can read through that again on our own. This, let's see, we're just having a discussion on this, and so let's come back next time, having everyone reread what David Church sent and the document that Alan has edited, and also have any other types of input that you want on what you would have liked to receive when you first started Planning Commission. What would have helped you as you first started to feel like you came in knowing what was happening, okay?
And Austin, I'd also be happy if you want to send that over, just take that David Church letter and sort of synthesize it into what we already have.
That's what I'm
Kind of
thinking is,
So I'd be happy to take the laboring war on that.
Okay, yeah, that'd be
great.
great.
Yeah, it'd be nice if we could end up with one, and at the end of it, we can reference that, you know, information came from these sources if we need to or something, but it'd be nice if we had one good document there. And with that, Alan's gonna leave. Oh, he's back. Okay. Oh, you didn't hit the space bar, Alan. You talked without hitting the space bar.
Oh, yeah, sorry. No, just sun went down, opening my blinds.
Ah, good. Yeah. Okay. So back to our document for Planning Commission. So discussion on training materials. I think that's good. Let's just, can we bring this up again on the next agenda as well, Austin?
Sure. I
Okay.
will make note to have that on the next agenda.
And then we can review that. And then if Alan can't come or something, we can save it for another one. But oh, here it is. You had inserted it. Oh, no, that's a different one. Okay, never mind. Let's go ahead and take a look at the next item on the agenda. And Austin will definitely want to introduce this. basically the mayor wanted to give us further direction on what he envisioned and what the city council envisioned us doing. So I'll let Austin explain that.
Okay, yeah. So we, as you all will remember, we've had some discussions on limitations of the size of structures, accessory structures, of homes, of lots. And that's been on, we've discussed that in the last, 4 or so meetings, I think. And so the mayor, he went and listened to your recommendations, and he felt like there was a need to be more specific on what he was looking for. And so he has asked that the Planning Commission address 5 specific issues within the building code and ordinances. And so he outlines these, and I've uploaded that here to your packet. And so he, the first one is height of structures. Number 2, the number of garage doors on the front facing or the front of the structure that faces the frontage. 3 is recreational structures. 4, driveway slope, and 5, massive additions. So as you can see, he kind of goes into detail on each one of these, specifically what he's looking for. So he wants the Planning Commission to really give these a good look and address these specific bullet points that he's outlined here. And so I think to tackle all this in one meeting seems like it would be a lot to do. So I think, it'd probably be a good idea to just look at it one item at a time and kind of take it that way. And so this is something that, probably would involve discussion. And then if the Planning Commission felt like, I guess out of this could come potential future ordinances or ordinance changes. But I don't know if you want to just start with like height or how we want to approach this, but.
I think my personal opinion is that we should put one of these on the agenda for the next 5 meetings. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, for the next 5 meetings. And then maybe you could pull the code that matches this section so that we could kind of compare or send it to us in advance. And then we could kind of discuss each of these and say what we think.
Yeah.
What a summary of what he's, what the potential problem, kind of like a problem statement or an opportunity statement, whatever, of saying, okay, this is the situation that we're trying to avoid. These are the ordinances that apply to this. This is, then what should we do? Does that make sense? Is that a good approach?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea so for example, the height, I can pull all the height, put those in, and then you guys can have a chance to kind of read through that for the meeting. And then when we get to the meeting, you can say, okay, well, this XYZ. Right. That's how I would love to, if we could do that, because the ordinances that apply, and you understand what he's going for. And I think another helpful thing, like if we're looking at height, for example, it might be helpful to also see what other municipalities are doing. So how do they measure height in Highland or Cedar Hills, which are also similar communities to our own, might be something interesting to look at. Yeah. And then I was thinking too, Austin, that like if we have a really full agenda, you could put maybe a simpler one on. If the agenda is really full next time, maybe we could kind of take a look at garage doors on the frontage or height, or I don't know. Maybe they're all about the same, but I do think some of them could take a lot more discussion than others. Right. So I don't care if you do it in that order, is what I'm trying to say. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Hey, Jane.
Mm-hmm.
Just a thought, thinking how we usually work through these things. Instead of taking 6 of these things at 6 different meetings, would we take 6 of them each over a month? Because just the way we usually do things, wouldn't the first meeting, for example, be, this is the issue, this is how other municipalities do it. Let's have discussion on it. Let's make some proposals and put some thoughts in place about either an ordinance, creating an ordinance, or amending an ordinance. And then 2 weeks later in the next meeting, that proposed ordinance comes before us for review and adoption and ultimately recommendation. So meeting one is tackling the issue in a discussion, and then the next meeting on that month is actually with the thought of either recommending an actual ordinance or amending an ordinance for the city council.
Yeah, we definitely would have one meeting discussing and then another meeting about the ordinance. And then I don't know if they want to wait. Each of these would require a public hearing because we would be changing ordinances. And we could do a couple different things. We could get them all ready and then we could have one public hearing on all these ordinance changes, or we could do them individually.
Well, the discussion, right? Meeting one, a discussion wouldn't require a public hearing, but when we're actually, voting on or doing a motion to recommend an ordinance or a changed ordinance, then that's the part that would require a public hearing, right?
And so we could do the discussion, and then the next time we could get prepared what we think we want in the ordinance and any fine tuning, and then it would need to have a public hearing in addition, and then the recommendation.
So
yeah, so I'm just saying, based on our normal load, right? I mean, we could just take one of these, and this would be about a 6-month process then.
Well, or what we could do is we could do the discussion on one, and then the ordinance the next week, and the discussion on the next one. Like we could kind of, you know what I'm saying? Tag team the process. So get one started and then the next week start the next one. Depending on our load. I mean, if our load stays light like this, then we can maybe do more. But if it picks up.
Yeah, if I may, Jane, it does seem like it's actually a pretty massive undertaking, because we're looking at, I mean, a number of different ordinances.
Okay.
And one of the downsides, if we were to do all of these in one public hearing and make one recommendation, someone may agree with all 5 or 4 items, but they don't. Let's say they don't agree with the garage door ordinance.
You're right. Yeah.
And we may not get a quorum to make a recommendation.
Right. Good thinking.
I almost think we have to tackle them one subject at a time.
Okay. Well, I'm okay with that. So let's go ahead. I honestly do think it will take a minimum of 2 to 3 meetings on most of these. Don't you, Austin?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's just start tackling them one at a time. And I do think that this is much better than just kind of the come up with something. It was just so broad. It was so big. It was just like, how can we even do that? So this is much more reasonable to be able to look at these specific things. So let's just, I think that's a great plan. Does anybody else have any input on as far as what our plan for going forward doing this is? Okay.
I do.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I don't have any input really, just because I like your plan, but I'm just wondering if we can get it before we get the agenda. So what subject we'll be talking about and the ordinance that goes with it, so we can, kind of get a little bit more.
Sure. Like more than 3 days to look at it.
More than 5 minutes of thought probably would be good. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So, I mean, which is there a certain item that you would like to tackle first, and then we can.
I think the lighting sounds like a good one to start with. It's like a training one.
I'm just looking at these. See, for me, the lighting sounds ambiguous. I'm all about like, can I measure it? Oh yes, a number. Garage doors on front would be an easy one to start with. We want to start with something simpler. Recreational structures, artificially increasing driveway slope would also be an easy one to go off of. Massive additions. What do you think? Should we start with the easiest one? What do you think is the easiest one, Austin? I shouldn't say easiest, simplest, most straightforward, would help us get started on the process.
Yeah, probably garage. You're probably right. Garage doors is probably the simplest,
Is that
Most-
okay if we start with that, everyone?
All right, with me.
Okay. Let's
Did-
go for it.
Do we have the ordinances all ready and stuff though, or are they pulled up for that?
Well, he's going to, we won't do it tonight. He'll pull the ordinances and send them to us, and then we'll read through it and be prepared. They may not be an
Well, that was
ordinance
really-
anywhere.
I can pull the ordinance right now. We don't have an ordinance on how many garage doors you can have on.
Oh, well, that's easy. So then what he'll come back with is a proposed ordinance based off of what we discuss next time. So we'll discuss, what do we think about garage doors?
And one of-
Maybe Austin can come up with some ideas.
One of the
Yeah.
more important items for me is what other municipalities are doing.
Mhm.
If it's just not an issue anywhere else, I feel like we're, rewriting the code on a lot of these things just to solve for one albatross that we have in the city. And I'm really reluctant to get engaged with that. So I just,
Mhm.
as we go through this whole process, that's my underlying principle that I'm going to be looking at everything with.
I think that's wise. So maybe garage doors won't be the easiest to start with, Austin, if we don't even have an ordinance yet.
Yeah, I mean, we have a clear height ordinance that we can.
Let's go to let's do the first one. Let's do height structure, because I think that will help us through the process the most. There's already an ordinance. We need to look, we want to see what other cities are doing. It's measurable, and we can make simple changes to the ordinance probably to adapt it.
Okay, yeah, I will. So I guess what we'll do then is we'll specifically set that as the agenda item, measuring height of structures, and then I will send you the applicable ordinance, and then I'll try and find some examples from other municipalities as well.
Perfect. I love it. And this is great because based on those videos, we're doing our planning job, right? Planning and helping make policy, and then ordinance suggestions or recommendations. Okay, so moving on to the next the next thing on our agenda. Is everyone okay to move on? Was there anything else you wanted to add, Austin or Jed or any of the council members, commission members? Okay, so we're in communications now. And who has any communications? Okay. We're set for our next meeting in 2 weeks. I assume, Austin, that there's no discussion of returning to the city hall to hold these meetings anytime soon.
No, not at this time.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll need to check on that, because I know that there has been talk about maybe having one person from the city council at city hall,
Mhm.
and everybody else remote. Join
Okay,
remotely, but we need a camera and stuff at city hall to be able to do that, and so
right,
we're not currently set up to do that at this point. So
right. And they were taking on the item of updating the technology in the room, but that won't be for a while. Correct?
they're looking into. I know that. So right now they're looking at a number of upgrades to the building.
Mhm.
That actually could happen sooner than you think. So.
Okay. I had one question that just reminded me of, do you have information on the fire that was started up above the emergency access road from Three Falls over to Grove or over to the Cove?
I mean, I know that, that it burnt about 1 acre, was affected. They were able to get it under control. Thankfully, they had a water truck on site that was kind of able to help get that under control. And so the contractor was actually able to get it mostly under control before the fire department even arrived, which was a good thing. But it was quite the scare. If they hadn't had the right stuff there, it could have been a much bigger.
Was it started from sparks from equipment?
Well, we don't know at this time, There's
Okay.
speculation on how it could have happened, but
Okay,
we have not identified the source.
okay. Well, thank you. Okay, anything else? All right, let's move on to the approval of the Planning Commission meetings from Planning Commission minutes from August 4th. Does anyone have any changes that they would like to discuss or bring forward? Okay, ready
Marla,
for
you-
motion?
Marla, you got that email, didn't you, from me?
Yes, and I made that change on my notes. Thank you.
Okay, do we have a motion? Can I get a motion? How about that? Sylvia wasn't here. Is that right, Sylvia?
That's right. Mhm.
So someone besides Sylvia needs to make a motion, please.
Do we just,
Motion to approve the minutes from August 4th, 2020, as contained in the packet, subject to the changes made by Sylvia.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second,
Okay, second by John, motion by Alan. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Okay, and that passes. And we will adjourn for the evening. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
But Jed, I have a couple quick questions if you're still on that are not part of the meeting. Do you have just a second? I can ask you a couple questions. Or is Jed gone already?
He's driving to Eber.
Man, he took off fast. He knew I was going to ask him some questions. I'll call him tomorrow at the city. Thank you. Bye, everyone.